Welcome to Season 4 of Purposeful Empathy, a show dedicated to conversations with people from around the globe who understand the world needs more empathy and are doing something about it. Today's episode is brought to you by Grand Heron International, an on-demand coaching provider for individuals and companies. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the show. Welcome to a new episode of Purposeful Empathy. Today I'm joined by Shah, who calls himself Captain Empathy because he's harnessing the superpower of empathy. He is CEO and co-founder of Jaago, which means to wake up in Hindi. It's a startup that has built the world's first empathy gym platform for companies and organizations to make empathy a daily habit. And I can't wait to talk about that in a second. Kevin is unafraid to share any parts of his growing authentic self and has been recognized by Puget Sound Business Journal in 2020 Outstanding Voices honoree for his work with the LGBTQ plus community. He's a technologist who has spent his career building and scaling technological solutions. He also continues to grow and evolve at the cross-section of several intersectional identities, including being a brown, gay, immigrant, relatively privileged millennial, married, dealing with invisible disabilities, cis man. So welcome, Kevin, to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that.
I'm so excited. And I just wanted to acknowledge the work you're doing with this show, and the Purposeful Empathy is just incredible and impactful, and I appreciate it, and thank you for doing that.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. This is all about amplifying the voices of people who get the fact that the world needs more empathy, right? And doing something about it. So you fall straight smack in the middle of that. So in your words, why do you think empathy is so mission critical at this moment for companies, organizations, and even communities?
Yeah, empathy is this, I call it the superpower, but to understand this, we know the data that data is telling us that we're going in an empathy deficit. People are sort of closing in communities. And a great example of that is the polarization that's happening in our communities, where people aren't listening to each other. We're talking past each other. We're yelling at each other. We're not truly trying to understand each other. In addition to that, the lack of diversity, equity, inclusion, intention in organizations and companies, even though that was like, oh, we got diversity, we like diversity, equity, or some companies did it, but data showed that out of the $8 billion spent in US alone on diversity, equity, inclusion, only 10% of the companies thought that it was working. But when you ask the professionals of diversity, equity, inclusion, they're like, yeah, none of it was working. Because there was an intention put behind it, and you can see the results of it. Companies are leaving revenue off the table by not being more inclusive, more diverse, by creating those happy and engaging environments where people thrive and can lean in. In fact, it's the toxicity of the companies is still something we see in cultures. And when we look at the goals of diversity, equity, inclusion, to achieve these goals, empathy is the power that gets us there. If you think of anything, even the biggest problems in the world, like climate change, or any of these things, we need empathy to help get us there. Because if we don't first seek to understand, which what empathy helps us do, we will never be able to come together as a community and solve the problems. It'll always just be my problem, my thing. And let me go get that toilet paper roll, or let me go get that gas before. Let me understand what the impact to each other is, a community. Let me see beyond my own lived experience and understand that everyone else has their own lived experience. And empathy can deliver that. In fact, there's this incredible cost to our economy without empathy. Trillions of dollars in war and all these things are spent when we are not practicing empathy. And that truly can help transform our communities.
So I'm imagining, I have a vision when you're talking about these toxic work environments, right? So I'd love to hear your vision of what an organization could look like if the toxicity was out and the empathy was in. What do you think would change, and how do you think people would be behaving? So if we, just looked into an organization that had high levels of empathy? What would we be seeing?
Oh my gosh, I love the question. I think that's so powerful of a question because it allows us to think about that ideal sense. I love it. The first thing I would say is the humans will be authentic. People will be able to be themselves. They won't be judged or asked to change their hair or their colors because of who they are. They will feel like they belong, that this is a company that I have a part of, I have a sense of ownership in. So when there is a problem, they take ownership of the problem. They don't have to wait for someone to say, hey, go, let's solve this problem. The leaders are going to be beyond their title. We're going to just see each other as human beings that are vulnerable, that are just trying to figure life out, be happy, looking for fulfillment. And we'll be supporting each other and seeking happiness. So in this vision of a company, their hierarchical structures don't exist. It doesn't mean you don't have hierarchy in like roles. Those you need for decision making or supporting each other. But what will be there is a space where it is psychologically safe for people to make mistakes, for people to be vulnerable, to share their weaknesses and grow together and point out ways to grow each other. People are coming in with a sense of curiosity. Well, let me ask you how you want to be identified. Let me ask you how you're feeling. Let me not assume. Let me not tell you. And that's what this sort of vision would look like. And when you bring in empathy fueled by the power of vulnerability, you can get that. And can you imagine how beautiful that could be in a company where people feel like I belong?
So I know that your vision is to make empathy a daily habit that's practiced on a regular basis. We have a reflex for empathy. Is your vision and mission to make this happen a result of your lived experience or something else?
So for context, I was building products for law enforcement, for police, for body cameras, taser, software services. I was building technology to help protect life, to drive accountability. And when George Floyd's murder happened, I saw the next trading day, the company stock hit an all-time high. And I was like, wait, someone's murder made me wealthier. I'm not changing the system. I'm benefiting from the system. The intention is not matching the impact. And then I saw the police using the products that I had built with positive intent against the protesters, against the Black Lives Matter protesters. And the police told me, this is a quote, we broke their spirits, so they didn't come back and protest the next day because their products work so effectively. And it broke me. I was like, wait, I was chasing this American dream of money, 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 retire fast. But what happened? I was giving up my values. I was giving up my authentic self. So in that moment, I chose in June of 2020, I chose to resign. I didn't have a job or a plan. I gave up all of that money, $15 million and all of that. And I said, okay, now what? And then I asked myself, how do we solve the problems of polarization in the communities, the goals of diversity, equity, inclusion? And my personal differentiator throughout my career has been empathy. As a product leader, as a business leader, people manager, I was better at my job because I was practicing empathy. And I put that on my resume. I used to write that on my resume even before I started this. And then I had the idea, I'm like, well, we need a way to learn empathy. In these one-on-one conversations, we can, but how do we scale it? How do we make it so that it's accessible to people? And I used to facilitate diversity, equity, inclusion trainings and workshops as well. And so that came with the idea, well, we need something that scale and technology can help us do that. And that led to the idea of we need an empathy gym, similar to like when if you hire a personal trainer and you just work out once a year, if you do DEI training once a year and don't do anything, you're not going to see any change or result. You need it to become a behavioral change, a daily change. And so that led to, let's create a mobile app that is a safe space for people to feel uncomfortable, learn and grow and make them empathy a daily habit. And that's how Jaago started.
Wow. Okay. So you're going to fall off your chair when I say this, but I have never once, not once, downloaded an app onto my phone. Not once. Maybe my husband has downloaded a couple of apps for me that he feels that I need to have, but I have never done it. So I want you to walk me through why it would be a good idea for me to download your empathy gym onto my phone.
Oh, wow. I love this. Is great. Oh my God. I haven't met someone who said that to me. It's exciting. I would ask you, do you like humans have this need? Like when we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a piece that's missing in all of that is this need to feel seen and heard, to be understood. And to do that, you have to share your own story, or you have to listen to other stories so you can even understand yourself. So the reason I think you should download this app is you'll be able to hear people's stories. So the way we built it is we've got hundreds of stories and anyone can upload their story in 3 minutes or less. And we have prompts. So prompts like when the first time you realized you were blank, a woman, an immigrant, a brown person, a white person, a rich person, any of those things, or time and change was hard. And you upload a story, you record it, and then you provide certain answers. You answers while you upload. And as an explorer, so you would download the app, you first create your own intersectional profile. So you learn about your intersectional identity. And then you are matched with your first story and you watch that story. So you learn deep listening. You get to hear a real story from a real person in the world around various themes. And these themes can be anything like race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, workplace safety, leadership. And then after you watch the story, you're asked a question. How did you feel? So you learn self-empathy. So you find a sense of self through this app first. And then you answer that question. Okay, how did I feel after watching this story? The second question is, how do you think the storyteller felt when they were telling the story? And when you answer, you answer from multiple choice, and then you get to see whether you match with what the storyteller said. And what do you think the storyteller felt when they were living that story? So now you're forced to put yourself in their perspective, understand your biases, remove yourself from your biases and understand the other person's perspective. And then you answer the question and you get to see whether you matched with them or not. And then you're asked, how much did this story change your outlook on this topic? So you have a moment of reflection. And we say in 3 minutes, in 6 minutes a day, literally just 6 minutes a day, you watch 2 stories, you answer these 6 questions, and then you get a score. So you get to see a measured growth in your day to day, every day. How well are you doing? Are you able to start seeing perspectives? So you get a measurable growth. And then you can, if you have the courage, which sharing your story is empowering and courageous, you can share your own story. So other people feel seen and heard. And so you get to start building this sense of self and start removing and understanding your own biases and self-empathy. So you build self-empathy, you build empathy for others, and you feel seen or heard, as well as you will have a better sense of joy and happiness coming out of this.
Why Jaago? Tell me the little philosophy behind that.
I'm from India. I grew up there, and so I wanted to pick a name. I wanted to pick a name that wasn't comfortable at first for people. I wanted them to come with a sense of curiosity. Ask a question. Why Jaago? The question you ask, build that sense of curiosity. I feel like our sense of curiosity is dying. We make assumptions. So first, being able to pronounce it slightly awkwardly. So you ask, how do you pronounce it? You ask, what does it mean? And that sense of curiosity, that first sense of discomfort, but then becoming comfortable, is that first accomplishment you feel. And that's what I wanted to impart. Is like, hey, it means to wake up, but the act of asking, how do you pronounce it? What does it mean? It elicits that sense of curiosity, and that's what I wanted.
I'm thinking about you as a entrepreneur. You mentioned earlier bootstrapping this. You're, got a lot of plates in the air simultaneously, and obviously you want this project to really fly. So that's the entrepreneur business side of you that's like hustling, but at the same time you're dealing with stories, right? You're curating these stories on your platform. I wonder if there's a story that you've been exposed to that really touched you, really moved you, that you feel like sharing.
Oh wow. Yeah, there's in this that we've heard. I had the privilege of watching all hundreds and hundreds of stories that are in Jaago. There's a story about a woman who shared about her empowerment about after coming out of sexual abuse from her partner, and finding her sense of self and understanding how she got out of it. That story truly was powerful. And I try not to tell other people's story. I want people to go listen, because that is it's through third party. I try not to tell other people's stories, but there's stories of people who are for the first time navigating finding religion or not finding religion. That has been unique to me, because I'm personally not religious. I was learning people just sharing their story, what happened, like find and understanding at their most vulnerable point when they find support and how they got religion. And so, and some people who, were religious and then what led to them not being religious. And that these other stories that you start learning, and my perspective changed not even changed, but like I was inspired by these new perspectives to see that. A story that was, I think, as memorable for me was just something as simple as this, because people say, oh, I don't have a powerful story. We don't want the stories of you landing the plane on Hudson. We want the day-to-day story. So there's a story of someone who's saying, hey, never did in my life a dentist sat down and teach me how to floss. At the age of 30, a dentist sat down and taught me how to floss for the first time. And they taught me, and till this time I hated flossing and I had cavities. And then a dentist just took that extra time to teach me. Instead of just saying, go floss, how about I show you how to do it? And now I'm able to floss and my teeth are amazing and I feel great. This little act of kindness, this little act of empathy to show like, hey, maybe someone did you learn how to floss, or can I teach you how to floss? And that is such a memorable story, because then every one of us can relate to that. We have those moments. Even till this day, a dentist hasn't taught me how to teach me how to floss. And I'm thinking about it like, wow, I wish someone had. No one has sat down to do that. And these are the moments that I remember, because these are the day-to-day moments that are relatable, that impact us, that help give us joy and happiness.
So 10 years out, where's Jaago in the landscape of our organizations? Like, blue sky thinking.
10 years out, everyone's got Jaago on their phones. They're watching 2 stories a day. They're sharing their story. It's building a community. So once a week, you're uploading your own story, a new story that's happening. It's become a library of our stories. It's become a history library of a story. So we're not just looking at the news. We can collect the stories of the people, and we can now share those stories out. Companies are empathetic. They're showing vulnerability. They're just humans. They're just understanding that we're all just humans trying to figure life out. And we're just working towards that. And I'm planning on doing physical empathy gyms, empathy spaces, play spaces for adults. So where adults can go and just have fun. That's not a sport, but it's just a place to build community. And I've got some ideas and games that you could play together. A social emotional gym is what I call it. And a play space. And so Jaago is something that's on families. A version for it is for families, where you have now a family library. So you're sharing stories within the family. And this becomes your record of all the stories. So remember the stories when your grandparents tell you. Now it's there. And so you can go back and reflect on it. You can share those out and learn about your family stories and explore other people's family stories. So that's where I see it's a world where stories are empowered and people are just able to seek and understand each other and ask their story.
So how do you ensure that it doesn't become a place like so much of social media where there's like toxic judgment and, nasty. So how do you guard for that?
Well, we've started with that as a goal. When you go into the app, you don't see anyone's name. You don't see their identity. No one sees your identity or name, your activity. It's just personal to you. Everything is personal. We don't share any data with anyone, any third party. We will never do that. And that's in our terms and conditions as well. And it's your little space. No one is allowed to comment. The only thing you can do is thank the storytellers for their courage. Do you want to thank the storytellers for their courage? Yes or no? It's not even a like. So you're not running for the likes. You're just seeing and being acknowledged and thanked for your courage. And the idea is every story that is uploaded is reviewed. So anything that doesn't match our story guidelines or is opinion or is just someone bashing or hateful or has like hate symbology is removed. So we have a review process as well. So that we're not building a social media platform. This is your own personal gym. Just like you go to a gym and you have your space and you do your thing, this is that. And it's not about judgment at all. No, you don't even have an opportunity to judge.
So the fact that it has like no commercial aspect in terms of, selling to third parties is really intriguing as, a graceful place for people to share. So I'm just curious, when it comes to actually the organizational usage of it, is there some curriculum that goes with it, or what's the vision there on how organizations can deploy it? Yeah.
Yeah, the way we're doing it, and we're doing a big company this month, which we're excited in a week. But the way we deploy it is we have our Empathy 101 workshop, which starts. We have this hour-long workshop that gives you that fundamental language of empathy and those tools. And then in that workshop, we help you start up on the app, and you're ready to go. And then say 6 minutes a day. We show the scores. All the people's scores are anonymized, and that becomes the company score. And everyone is seeing that. And you publicize it out in the public proudly that we are putting work to this. This is our growth. We are working and we're building it. So it becomes this joint communal goal and mission. And then you're working towards that. And there's checkpoints. We have teams. So what we built in is in your plan, you have these workshops. We have checkpoint workshops that bring in, so that like a safe zone workshop for LGBTQ folk, storytelling workshops, and then we bring in experts like you or storytellers and speakers to sort of provide those boosts. So it's like this continuous learning model. So let's say if it's February, we say, oh, Black History Month. We're going to bring in speakers and people, experts in that as part of this and engage. And then our roadmap items are to add actions. So you've added stories. Now let's all do an action together. Let's volunteer, or let's read this book together, or let's chat, or let's go donate in this space, or let's join this webinar.
So I've been teaching at McGill for about 10 years. And I guess about 8 years ago, I had the privilege of hanging out for a day with Marshall Gantz at the Kennedy School at Harvard. And he teaches like a 3-day workshop on public narrative. And there's a real architecture to public narrative. There's the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now. Because he believes that, storytelling is a really important leadership art. And that the only way that you move people is you don't really move people through the mind. Otherwise, Inconvenient Truth, when it came out, would have changed, all of our reactions to climate change. But that's not what happened. So we have to be compelled through our passion, through our emotional senses. And the 1-day training that I did, I was an observer, and I, borrowed from it to make it like a 3-hour workshop with my students. So I teach social entrepreneurship and leadership, and we spend a few hours learning the kind of architecture of a public narrative. And then the following class, all the students in the class, I'm lucky that I have, a class that's less than 50 students, but each one has 3 minutes to share their story. And you'll appreciate this, but that class is the defining class of the semester, the before and the after. Because the before, everybody comes in with their social masks. Everybody's got like their personas and whose hands go up and blah, blah, blah. And then you hear from everybody. And the entire spectrum of human experience comes up, like it never fails that somebody's going to talk about a friend who struggled with depression or cutting. And you'll always hear about a surprise where, their sister or brother was homeless for some time or had an addiction. Like the entire spectrum of human experience comes up. And everybody recognizes that just below the surface, everybody's got a story. And we're all complicated in dealing with stuff. And as soon as that kind of comes out to the open, the community is born. There's a birth that happens. And the rest of the semester is a totally different experience. Like even the group projects are different because people trust each other better. And there's just like a sense of respect and care for one another after a 3-minute story. So I really wish you all the best with this, Kevin.
You've just described Jaago in a class section. Exactly what you've done is what Jaago does, and we've done do it to scale. Absolutely, 100% agree. And I've seen that as soon as I've shared my story, I shared this story about quitting. People approach me with completely different. I approach people differently. When they share their story, someone shared that they were struggling. An employee of mine was like, "I'm struggling with this pandemic. I just don't know. I don't feel engaged." Think about that. People wouldn't go to their boss and say that. That would be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm saying I'm not engaged. I don't feel engaged. My boss is going to get mad." And this is an employee who shared with me. And I was able to talk to them like, let's understand it. Let's focus it. And then 2 weeks later, working with them, they're super motivated. They're driving it. And it changes the interaction. So what do you share? Thank you for sharing that. And thanks that every college should do this. In fact, we started a Jaago pilot with a university as well to build this kind of a culture, what you're saying, to help drive that. Because even schools, bullying can be reduced for children because you start saying, oh, there's a story behind this person. There's a story behind this person. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So, speaking of story, as a final question, as we come to a conclusion of our conversation, and thank you so much for finding the time, even though you've got two big projects going. I wonder if you could share a time in your life where you were on the receiving end of empathy, or what I call purposeful empathy. So that's intentional, it's empathy on purpose, and what that meant for you.
Yeah. So growing up in India, being a gay man, I was fat, lots of pimples, and I just didn't feel understood and seen. I was excluded, actively excluded. Friends would actively uninvite or not invite me, and I would know, or things like that. Or I struggled to make friends. It was probably the darkest times of my life, growing up, trying to sleep every night, feeling alone. And then in college, I picked a college purposely that was far away from anyone I knew because I was like, I'll start fresh. I'm going to start fresh. And I came to Florida. I started for my university, for my bachelor's, and I joined a group of friends. And because I was career minded, I was like, oh, so I joined a group of friends based on that career prospect. Turns out, in hindsight, incredibly toxic group of friends. Like, like they would call me Stain, my nickname. And I was there. I would participate, and like jokes would be like, "Hey, I'm fat. You're ugly. You can't fix that." And like that's the kind of friendship I was part of, and I was there for years. And I again got darker and horrible, and I just never felt seen or heard. I felt alone. Again, it was just something that I was dealing with, and the idea of exclusion. I constantly there was moments that they would these are the closest friends I had at that moment that they would go on trips and not invite me and say, we are purposely not inviting you. And because you're a stain. And then they would still hang out the other nights or other evenings. And so one of the friends in there we had recently joined was dating someone in the group. We became roommates and we were friends and he's also gay, and we were friends and we were housemates, and we just hung out a lot. And then there was this final moment where I was just had enough. And the main person that was doing a lot of this, or I was closer to, who wouldn't let us be gay. He'd be like, I'm okay if you're gay, but don't be gay. That's how they would be. And so, like you can't date someone, for example, or you can't go to a gay bar and things like that. Like it was really bad. And so I finally called and I said, you know what? I think I'm ending this friendship. I can't do this. And I didn't have any friends. That was it. I was like, okay, I'm going to just figure this out. And I'm ending this friendship. It's over. He started yelling at me. He was like, you're a heathen, you're this, and then just cursing me out because got a rejection that he's not used to. And, or hearing no. And then my housemate, he asked my husband, oh, what about you? Are you doing the same thing? And till this day, no one had chosen me other than my mom. So the only person in my life had chosen me was my mom. And in that moment, my friend said, no, I'm also ending my friendship with you, even though he didn't have a similar experience, but he did it for me and the love for me. And he's my best friend till this day. And it was the first moment that someone chose me that I felt seen or heard. It was the first moment where I felt included. And I saw that purposeful empathy and I felt it and I felt the power of it. And my life got amazing after that. It was absolutely amazing. And he's still part of my life. We're going to go on a trip together in October. But that was a moment where purposeful empathy really shaped my life, where when I saw first person outside of my family, my mom, who chose me, and that changed the trajectory of my life.
And that's why you believe empathy is a superpower, as do I. That's a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that, Kevin.
Thanks for asking.
I can see that the emotion still comes up. And that's it. That's why I ask the question of all my guests at the end. I never know what story I'm going to get. And then inevitably it becomes about something important. And then we all realize how potent empathy is. And it's available to all of us. And we just need to learn to turn up the volume. So with that, Kevin, I wish you all the best of luck with your Jaago project and your empathy gym. And I may very well download that app, and I may even contribute a story, because I feel I don't know how many stories you have about miscarriage, but I think I have a story to share. So it was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much, Kevin. And thanks to everyone who's been watching and listening. We'll see you next week at Purposeful Empathy. Now, what if you had access to your own council of coaches to help you break free from your own thinking clutter, make that important decision, and liberate you from whatever is holding you back? At Grand Heron International, you get to select a coach of your choice anytime from anywhere. Visit grandheroninternational.com and harness the power of on-demand coaching today.